offense to my mama, but I'm a daddy's girl. I'm unapologetically black, and sometimes I'm petty. I never wanted to be a politician. See, my father was one, and although I love him to death, I told the universe I would never follow in his footsteps. But a wise person once told me, the quickest way to make God laugh is to tell him what you would never do. And most importantly, I'm the single mom of the most adorable 12-year-old son, Aiden. Catch his adventures at #StuffAidenSays. Growing up, you couldn't tell me my family wasn't rich. I was a pretty happy kid and never wanted for much. What I didn't know was my parents were working miracles behind the scenes. See, they were my first teachers about the value of money. My mother taught me how to save and balance my checkbook, and my father taught me about the importance of investing and compound interest. Both taught me the value of retail therapy. When I was 14, my favorite Aunt Deborah died. She was a single mom too, and after her death, her son Todd came to live with us. Around the same time, my father got a promotion in city government, and we bought a bigger house. We moved from a small 2-bedroom, 1-bath to a 5-bedroom home. Some might say that we moved on up. And in a very real way, we had, but we were lucky, because most families from my part of town never moved on up, no matter how hard they tried. They were too busy keeping each other from falling down to move on up. And although we moved on up, I still fell down. See, I was part of a tiny percentage of African Americans who finished college without debt. Don't get me wrong, I had debt, just not student loan debt. I took advantage of the credit card companies that swarmed our campuses and was impressed by my name embossed on a tiny piece of plastic. And even better, I had to have a new car and my own apartment after graduation. And then I started my own business, and everything was great until my business failed within the first year. My father was sent to jail. My mother was diagnosed with terminal cancer, and I had to move home to take care of her. 9 months later, I lost my job. Then I lost my fiance. He's not dead, just gone. And then my mother died, and everything was gone. See, there was no nest egg, no stocks and bonds, no pension, no generational wealth, no equity in our home, just a $25,000 life insurance policy that I had to split between the funeral home, my cousin Todd, and me. I had no choice. I had to file bankruptcy. Like many in my community, I had fallen down, but I had an education, horrible credit, but I could still see a way forward. It took me 10 years to stand back up. I finished graduate school, got a good job, even bought a small condo. I was living the American dream, right? Well, that was because after I fell down, the knockout blow never came. For many who are stuck between TV land expectations and the realities of being black in America, the knockout blow comes quick, and it comes from nowhere, and it takes many forms. A stray bullet, untreated asthma or diabetes, a cousin who needs bail or one who can't afford funeral expenses, toxic stress, and trauma. Any of these knockout blows could keep you from standing back up, because despite what they tell you, education is not the great equalizer. Did you know that close to 90% of African American families take out student loans as opposed to 60% of white families? And did you know that black families are 5 times more likely to default on that student loan debt? Why? Racism today and racism yesterday. Because of racism today, a white high school graduate earns more than a black college graduate. And because of racism today, only 40% of African American families own homes as opposed to over 70% of white Americans. And when we look at racism yesterday, immediately the ghost of slavery appears. After the Civil War, President Abraham Lincoln established a bank for freedmen, aptly known as the Freedmen's Bank. After Lincoln was assassinated, the bank failed, and Black Americans lost over $50 million in wealth. Post-Reconstruction, Black wealth was violently destroyed by riots and mass killings. This was followed by Jim Crow, deed restrictions, and redlining, all of which leads to the current era of mass Black incarceration. So you tell me, how was the Black community supposed to build wealth? What do I mean by wealth? Well, in simple terms, wealth is all the assets you own, plus the assets your grandparents and parents handed down to you, minus your debt. In healthy communities, wealth is built over generations, each generation working on the wealth or building on the wealth of those who came before. Like most white Americans, Black Americans hold most of our wealth in our homes, but it doesn't work the same. Let me explain. Imagine you're white, and your grandpa bought a home for $10,000 with his GI Bill benefits after the war. Your parents then sold that house and bought another house for $180,000 in 1983. And that house is now worth $300,000 minus the home equity loan they took out to put you through private school. So you have over a six-figure head start just because your parents and grandparents bought homes in the right neighborhoods. And that's just the house. If we look at the full picture, we can't forget great-grandma's diamond ring and those good union pension benefits. Now, if you're in the audience in white and what I've described does not match your particular situation, please know that it matches many in your community and almost none in mine. See, both of my grandfathers fought in both world wars. Neither of them received the GI Bill benefit. And when they could afford to buy a home, they couldn't afford to buy one next to your grandpa. See, on my father's side, my grandpa Charlie was a union painter, but he couldn't find a job in St. Louis. It wasn't until East St. Louis, Illinois elected his first Black mayor that he found a job in his trained field. He then moved his family to East St. Louis and took a job with the Housing Authority. That allowed him to buy his first home in 1967. On my mother's side, my grandpa Eddie was a butcher, and he found a home to buy in the late 1950s. But as soon as more than a few Black families moved in the neighborhood, all the white families left and took all of the public investment with it, and the community began to rot. The streets grew darker and dangerous instead of brighter and safer. So over 50 years, even though my grandparents owned their homes throughout generations, those homes did nothing but lose value, and my cousins and I are left with nothing. See, my grandpa Eddie's home was destroyed by a fire after it was hit by lightning. And my grandpa Charlie's home was so far beyond repair because no bank would lend my grandmother money to fix it, even though she could afford the payments, because banking practices decided that my community wasn't worth investing in. So there's no home, no pension benefits, no nothing. And my great-grandmas had sets of iron shackles, not diamond rings. It's because of all of this that the median wealth between white and Black families in America is 10 times. Let me repeat that. The median wealth of white families is 10 times that of Black families. 10 times. And it's not getting any better. 1 in 5 Black families has zero wealth or negative wealth. See, education can't be the great equalizer unless wealth is there to go with it. And unlike white families, wealth isn't waiting for Black families throughout generations. We have to borrow. And for us, borrowing is an act of desperation or necessity, not hope. We borrow not to bet on our future, but to escape our past. So what do? Well, it's simple. We should root out racism, pay reparations, rebuild Black neighborhoods, revolutionize the college education system, make college free for everybody, and pay everyone a living wage. Okay, so it's simple. I can leave right now. If it was that simple, I wouldn't be here today. But there is something we can do. When I was elected treasurer of the city of St. Louis, I discovered that I was the most unique elected official in the country, no, the world. Not only am I the city's cash management, banking, and investment officer, I'm the parking supervisor. So I manage all the city's 6 garages, 2 surface lots, and over 7,700 metered parking spaces, and the money it brings in. And believe me, it's a decent amount of money. And in politics, that's a decent amount of power. But I decided to use my power for good and not evil. When I started the College Kids Children's Savings Account program in 2014, local elected officials thought I was crazy. They thought I was nuts. They thought you have some ulterior motive giving money to kids. See, the College Kids program gives a college savings account to every kindergartner in a public or charter school, and we load it with the first $50. And where's that money come from? You guessed it, parking fees. So every time you feed a meter, every time you park in a city-owned garage, every time you pay a parking ticket, you're helping our kids achieve their dreams. Now, doesn't that make you feel better about paying parking fees? Our kids watch these accounts grow because we add to it when they and their families do good things. We match their savings, and we add to it when they have good attendance and when their parents participate in financial education courses. See, this isn't just an account with a few dollars in it. This is an entry point into the entire financial system. Our kids use these accounts to dream of all of the places they will go, whether at a 2- or 4-year college, vocational or technical school, even a union apprenticeship. Our parents use these accounts to improve their relationship with money, how to understand it, how to bank it, how to grow it, and how to manage it. And it's working. Our families are improving their credit, buying their first home, or even opening accounts for themselves or other children. Now I know what you're thinking, $50? What's $50? Well, $50 may not be a lot to you, but it's everything to our kids. Have you ever stood in front of a room full of kindergarten students and told them, you have $50, and you have $50, and you have $50? They go crazy. They think that you just gave them $5,000 because they have no concept of money at 5 years old. But when we do this, we paint a picture of limitless possibilities for our children. Now, many of these accounts may never cover the full cost of college tuition, and many of them may still have less than $500 in them when they graduate. But how does that help? Well, children with less than $500 saved are 3 times more likely to go to college and 4 times more likely to complete college than children without savings. And every pre-college dollar saved avoids $2 to $4 in student loans. And it's not just St. Louis. College Kids is one of 65 programs over 34 states helping over 500,000 children achieve their dreams. And here's the part that's going to blow your mind. You ready? If this program had been started back in 1979, it would have reduced the racial wealth gap between white and black families by 82%. Can you imagine what this city or our country would look like if the racial wealth gap between white and black families was only 2 times instead of 10 times? Now imagine if it had been started earlier. Like most good ideas, the idea of giving children money is not new. It's as old as this country. See, I've been reading Common Sense by 18th century political thinker Thomas Paine. Some might say that I'm intense or I'm insane. You want a revolution, I want a revelation. So listen to my declaration. I forgot where I was. I'm sorry, y'all. I have a bad habit of putting song lyrics in my speeches. It dates back to my time in the legislature. Anyway, Thomas Paine said in 1795, he proposed paying every 21-year-old 15 pounds to compensate for the land that was no longer available to them because prior generations had taken it. That's about $2,800 today. Some say that this was an early proposal for children's savings. So even in the 18th century, they knew that education wasn't the great equalizer. Why is it so hard for us to understand today? Our children need education and wealth if we want them to move on up and stand up. They did nothing wrong but be born black. I was born black, but I stood up, but not without a lot of luck and with parents who moved on up. See, I want to help the next generation to stand up and to move on up and to need a lot less luck to do it. Every generation needs help moving out from the shadows of the ones that came before. And that's why, as the treasurer of the city of St. Louis, I'm giving away your parking money. One more reminder. Don't forget to pay your parking tickets. Thank you.